So here we go. Okay, so welcome to life in the fast lane here. We in times of transformation and times of redefinition and an incredible time of learning and a time of going inward, a time of really looking at things in a different way, being in a world that nobody has ever been in before. We've never been in such a world. We've never been in such circumstances. So it's pretty awesome. So I like to always start the class and we relate, and the world exists in dimensions of space and time. And I feel that in terms of our Torah life, to just find ourselves in time, where are we in time, is always very helpful and grounding and orientating. Just like in a yoga class, I ask my students to find yourself in space and feel your body on the ground and feel where you are in relation to the space around you. So in terms of the Jewish calendar, we always somewhere in time that's different to other times and has unique lessons to teach us. So we know we in the month of Iyar, which is Ani Hashem Rofecha, I am God, your healer. And of course, we in a period of time where the entire world is thinking about how do we stay healthy, how do we recover if we weren't healthy, God forbid, and hearing about people who, for some reason, sometimes it's irrational, we don't even understand how people have capitulated to this terrible virus that's going. I actually have to just share that we have a person who attends to certain things in our house, and I called him on Sunday morning. Something in our house was broken and I didn't hear back from him, and I called him on Monday and I didn't hear back from him, and then yesterday I started thinking, this is very weird, he always gets back to me. And I just heard that he passed away, his wife passed away, and his son passed away from corona, and I'm like totally in shock. So the ideas that we're talking about, if we've ever said in the month of Iyar, Ani Hashem Rofecha, that the letters of the month of Iyar break down to I am God, your healer. So maybe we've paid attention to them in some abstract way, but we need to pay attention to them in a very different kind of way now, because our lives really depend on us understanding these concepts. And not only do our lives depend on that, but nothing about the Torah that we're learning is that abstract anymore. It's very real. It's very real to talk about the fact that one day Moshiach is going to come, and when Moshiach is going to come, life is going to be very different. Is that Sharon who's just joined us? I think so. Hi. It's very nice to see you. So I've muted you, but I see you. So a lot of things that we've learned about, that we've learned and maybe had a thought that it's abstract, you know, the idea that Moshiach is going to come to the world is one of the 13 principles of faith from the Rambam. And the way that that principle of faith is articulated is, I believe with a total trust and faith that the Moshiach will come. And even if he tarries, I still believe that he's going to come. So it's nice to keep believing that and believing that and believing it. But if it actually starts looking like our world is changing and everything about our world is changing and we're going through quantum shifts of being, can we still, you know, trust and have faith that that exactly is really what's happening? So Esther Noy, when we started the call, she said to me she downloaded this book that I sent out on Shabbat, that I sent out in my newsletter. So if you haven't downloaded it, I really encourage you to do so. But I want to just tell you the incredible story about that download and the book. So on Shabbos, I I'm almost self-conscious to say it, but I was meditating, and I don't think I should be self-conscious to say that, because we should be doing that a lot of the time. But I'm not used to saying I was meditating, but anyway, I was. And I got this sense that, you know, if any of you are on social media, which I'm sure everybody is, because how can you not be? And there's YouTubes, and there's this doctor and that doctor, and this virusologist, and this attitude about how to be safe, and that attitude, and it's like a lot of information. And while I was meditating, I really got an incredible insight that I need to find out what Miriam would say about these times. Miriam, the prophet from the Bible, Miriam Hanavia. And I have a book. I've had this book for many years. It's written by one of my favorite authors. Her name is Melinda Ribner. Now, people know that I often quote her because she wrote the book Kabbalah Month by Month, which I love. And she wrote this book on biblical women. And I kind of, when I came out of my meditation, I'm like, where's the book? So I went and I looked on all the shelves in my bedroom, couldn't find it. Went downstairs to the library, couldn't find it. Looked in the Shabbos room on all the bookshelves, couldn't find it. And I was quite frustrated because I thought, I really want to know what Miriam has to say about what she has to say. And the way that the book is constructed is that the woman who wrote it, Melinda Ribner, whose name I think is also Miriam, she creates these questions, and she interviews biblical personalities, and she brings all her knowledge of Chumash and Midrashim to answer the questions. I was very bothered that I couldn't find this book. And then Hashem gave me an incredible gift, because on Sunday I was online and looking at my Facebook, and I saw that she said, as a mother's gift to all the women, she is putting a link up, and everyone can download her book for free on their computers. And I was very grateful, because I'm like, oh, good, I got the book. I thought I didn't have it, and now I have it. So I felt very, very happy. And of course, as soon as I downloaded it, I read the chapter on Miriam. So I want to just share it with you a little bit, a few teeny tiny ideas, because I will encourage you to read the book yourself. But basically, she starts off and she says, you will be in a transition in your lives very soon, or you are the people who are going to be facing enormous changes in your world. And this book was written many years ago. And you're going to get very insecure about all the changes that are happening. And you need to trust in Hashem, and you need to have faith, and you're going to be disinvested from a lot of your material sense of well-being and security. And she says a lot of things. I wasn't intending right now to say everything what she says, but she does say a few things that I do want to highlight. And one of the things she says is that we are going to be becoming more and more open to the Torah of Moshiach and the Torah of the feminine. So Esther Noy, you said that this is reminiscent of Tamar Tabak. So this is a classical Hasidic idea that when Hashem created the world, there was a big sun and a big moon, and the sun representing masculine energies and masculine ways of being, hierarchy and rules and laws and kind of cerebral, rational way of being. And the moon representing feminine ways of being, the Shekhinah, the divine presence, the intuition, the being within, so to speak. And that when the world was first created, there was the idea that there can't be two big luminaries, so the moon shrunk down, and at the end of time, the moon is going to get big again. Well, hello, we in that time when the moon is going to start reclaiming its bigness and maybe we'll be able to have a big moon and a big sun, and they'll be able to cooperate. But there is this idea that at the end of times, as we come close to Moshiach, the feminine ways of being, the ways of being that are connected to what's called the divine, the Shekhinah, the indwelling of God's presence, as opposed to the awe-inspiring, transcendent aspect of God, that's going to start becoming more and more apparent. So if we talk about it, that in a masculine way of being, we look at Hashem and we say, wow, you are so powerful and you orchestrate everything that's in the world, and I am subservient to you, and I bow down to you, and I have tremendous awe and respect of you, God. And there's that way of being. And then that's, in a way, a response to a transcendent God, a God who is bigger than all of us and who's powerful and deserves awe and respect. And then there's another aspect of God, which is the indwelling, the immanent aspect of Hashem, which is within us, and particularly within people connected to the intuition and connected to feminine qualities, connected to intuition, connected to woman, and defined by the quality of malchus. So all of these ideas are coming together today because in terms of the sphera and the sphirot, we're going to be moving from a week where the focus was hod, which is surrender, acknowledgement, gratitude, submission, and let's say surrendered gratitude. And from that, an acknowledgement of God's greatness. We're finishing that week, and we're coming into the week of Malchus. And Malchus is everything I've been saying about the woman's Torah, or the Messianic Torah, or the Torah of the Shekhinah connecting to the indwellingness. It's about receiving and being receptive to this different, receptive to godliness, receptive and tuning in and slowing down. Now, the reason why I'm speaking about this at great length, I think, is that it also is going to connect in with the themes of the Parsha, which is about Shabbat, and the Yovel, which is about, Shabbat is about slowing down and receiving and being rather than doing. So just to finish speaking about Miriam, and then we'll come back and revisit the other themes, just about Miriam. So Miriam is the woman who taught and inspired the woman while they were in Egypt, while they were witnessing the 10 plagues, while they were coming out of Egypt, while they were in the Midbar. She was really the main mashpia mentor for the woman. So in this interview, it's very cute, the 21st century Melinda Ribner, or Miriam also, I think her name's Miriam Sarah, I'm not sure, I've forgotten, but she says, didn't you feel badly that Moshe had all the respect and he was in charge and he was forefront and you were kind of in the background? And then she so beautifully starts to explain how a woman who's quiet and in the background can have this incredible power and can still be such a leader and can still have incredible impact on everyone around her. And again, it's the power of the inward and the understated and the subtle and the feminine and the indwelling, as opposed to the external and the outside. So that's another aspect of feminine leadership. And then the last thing I want to say, taking from that interview, which I thought was so beautiful and insightful, was something that we can actually look inside in the Chumash, because it's going to connect to Shabbat also. But it says that Miriam led the woman out of Mitzrayim and in song and dance. And I thought that was very beautiful, that when the interviewee asked the imaginary, Miriam Hanaviah, what is our job? What is our role in the world now? She said so beautifully, she said, I'm just going to change this a little bit, if that's okay. She said so beautifully that our job is the singing and the dancing, that's really singing and dancing. Singing and dancing, I'm going to do it back like this. Singing and dancing, and specifically singing and dancing in a circle. That the woman in that time, when they went through Kriyas Yamsuf, they did singing and dancing in a circle, and she spoke about, instead of hierarchical leadership structures, circular we call our Wednesday night learning a Torah learning circle, and the idea of circles, learning circles where everything is equal in relation to the center. And the center for woman is that God is within. So our functioning is instead of so much relating to God out there, it's learning to relate to God in here, as well as being connected with each other in a circle. So all of the circle are equal in relation to God in the center, and God in the center in relation to our own selves and our way of accessing our own intuition and our own innerness. So I'll leave you to get more from the book, download it and read it, and you can read all the chapters. I hope the link is still active. But all the main personalities in Chumash are written about, and it's a really, she's a great writer. She lives in Eretz Yisrael now. She's American, and her writing is inspirational. So that's a little bit about Miriam. Actually, it's a lot about Miriam, and maybe I'll put the Hayom Yom aside, because I want to talk to you about the Parsha, and we've taken a lot of time. I like to do the Hayom Yom as a warm-up, but I think we warmed up already into being able to makabel. Makabel is receive, which is a feminine quality. The way we can receive information, we receive the Shabbat, we're going to receive Moshiach, we receive the light of God. It's all about our capacity to receive. So coming into this week's Parsha, and it turns out that there's actually two Parshiot together, Behar, which is on the mountain, Har Sinai, Behar, and Bechutei are talking about the commandments. As we start the Parsha, it says, Hashem spoke to Moshe in the desert at Har Sinai, saying, speak to the Bnei Israel and say, when you come to the land that I'm giving you, the land should rest a Shabbos to Hashem. So we know that we have a Shabbat, and not only do we have a Shabbat that we've been commanded to keep, but really Shabbat is kind of at the core of many of, almost certainly the core of how we relate to time. Shabbat is at the core of that. And Shabbat is kind of at the core of a lot of our relationship with Hashem and mitzvot altogether. So I'll talk more about that. But in the Parsha it says, when you come to the land that I'm giving you, the land should rest a Shabbos to Hashem. You may sow your field for 6 years, and for 6 years you may prune your vineyard and gather its produce. But in the 7th year, the land should have a complete rest, a Shabbos to Hashem. You shouldn't sow your field, you shouldn't prune your vineyard, You shouldn't reap for yourself the aftergrowth of last year's harvest. You shouldn't pick the grapes which you set aside, for it will be a year of rest for the land. And then it says the produce which grows on its own should be ownerless. Everybody should be able to come and, just take the produce, and even the animals should be able to come and take this produce from the land. And then the next part about the Parsha talks about not only should we have a Shabbos for the land every 7 years, but then after there's been a cycle, 7 cycles of 7, there's a Jubilee year, which is like Yom Kippur is Shabbos of Shabboses. So the Jubilee is a sabbatical of sabbaticals. So every 7th year is Shemitah, a Shabbos. And then after you've had 7 times 7 years, so that would be 49, the 50th year is Jubilee. So a Jubilee year has special qualities to it. One of the special qualities is that all the land, maybe during the last 50 years, 49 years or whatever, you as a landowner got into debt, your crops didn't go well, something else happened. Maybe you had to sell a portion of your land, or for whatever reason you needed to divide the land for whatever. On the 50th year, the land would all go back to its original owners, number one. Number two, if a person ran into debt, or different circumstances came about, and in order to kind of pay off a debt or do whatever needed to be done, a person could sell themselves, a Jewish person could sell themselves into slavery to pay off a debt or whatever. At the end of this 50th year, all free slaves and all those kind of contracts would be negated, and everyone would go free, and all the land would go back to its starting point. It's almost like you're playing a game with your kids, and everybody gets a card, and like Monopoly or something, and then there's a reset and everything goes back, and everybody's got an equal amount of cards and an equal amount of money and an equal amount of resources. So I think that we had a lot of Torah portions since Purim that talked about quarantine and sickness. Quarantine, we had a lot of things about sara'as, which is this kind of leprosy. It's not really a leprosy, it's a spiritual leprosy, that if a person was speaking lashon hara or lashon hara about another person, they would get this skin affliction, which was a spiritual form of leprosy. And then they would have to go into quarantine, go into isolation until they could come out of isolation. So we had that quite a few weeks, talking about all different things about quarantine and leprosy. Interestingly enough, in the interview with Miriam, she's asked about her leprosy and the fact that she had to go into quarantine, and she says it was a great time. She connected to her essence. She was alone with Hashem. She could do tshuva. She could, go inwards. And then she said, in fact, when she came out of it, she hadn't been able to have children up until that point. And after I hate to say this because it's going to sound very new agey, but I want to say it. After she raised her vibration, after she did this tshuva, after she had time to communicate in a deep way with Hashem, she came out and she was transformed in a good way. And then she did have children with her husband, Kalev. It was very beautiful to read. And it's incredible because the whole chapter and the whole book was written, 5-6 years ago. And it's almost prophetic when you read it now, everything that is said about Miriam and how she answers the questions. It's mamish, like she's talking to all of us now, and she's saying, if you want to know how to relate to quarantine, how you relate to, changes, fear, transformations, letting go of old realities, she has an answer to share with us, which is amazing. So in terms of that, quarantine, So we were talking about quarantine and talking about Sara'as, and now the Chumash is talking about rest, and it's talking about Shabbat, and it's talking about Yovel. And we can't really talk about Moshiach until we can talk about rest. We can't talk about Moshiach, we can't really be ready for Moshiach until we can talk about not doing. We can't really understand this shift that we're moving into, becoming people who can makabel panei Mashiach, receive the face of Mashiach. That's how it's interesting. We makabel panei Mashiach, we receive not the complexion, I can't think of the word, the reality of Mashiach, we receive it. We can't do that until we can really own not doing, being quiet, being still, receiving, and trusting in Hashem and handing over to Hashem. So that's very interesting, because when we talk about a Shemitah, all the challenges of Shemitah are in a way the challenges of Shabbat, but just made bigger. Because in Shabbat, for people who haven't committed to Shabbat, the idea of not doing for a whole day of the week can be very intense. And if you're in business, or you run a store, or you feel like you're in the marketplace, you've got to compete in whichever way that you do, not to be busy on a Shabbat is a huge thing. But it turns out that Shabbat is a very critical part of everything that is crucial to our identity as people who came out of Egypt, where we were serving Pharaoh, and we needed to get out away from that treadmill, hamster wheel, where one just runs without stopping. Now, Hashem was very kind to us right now in this time, because we would never have stopped running. Never. Because we as a people, I think, were committed to running faster and faster and faster, because the more busy you are, the more impressive you are, and the more social followers you have on social media, or the more classes you're teaching. And I'm talking to myself now, so don't think I'm reprimanding anybody else. This is for me as much as it is for anyone. The more you do, the more you're justifying your existence. And if we're going to shift into a messianic headspace, it's not about the more you do, it's about the more you are. It's going from doing to being. But God gave us a tremendous gift, because he said, you can't stop on your own. You are addicted to just doing. I'm going to do you a huge favor. I'm going to shut everything down. Most of you, a small percentage of people are, and I don't want to sound insensitive, and I don't want to sound callous, but people, and I hate to say this, but it is true, people die every day, all the time, and have been doing for many years, from traffic accidents, cancer, all kinds of diabetes, obesity, hundreds of things. People die all the time. So when people say thousands of people are dying, relative to the kind of shutdown that's happened, the amount of deaths for Corona, I think Hashem has transformed the world in a very compassionate way, because he could have transformed the world with a terrible war. Thousands more people, hundreds more people could have died. What he did was he made everyone so scared that everyone went home, shut the doors, got quiet, and are trying to not do, and dealing with themselves in a way that they haven't had to. And yes, people are dying. And I just shared with you that this man that works in our house is actually he was our plumber, Alav Shalom Ephraim. I don't know his family name. his father's name. But people are dying, it's true. But relative to the amount of people that die to flu epidemics and other things, I think Hashem has managed to achieve an incredible transformation and shutdown of life on every front. And most of us, our biggest symptom is anxiety and fear. For most of us, some people have had a very, very hard time with struggles with actual illness, and I really wish all of them were a refuah shalema. But at the same time, most people, the fight, the real battle is between fear, panic, and trust, which is really what the messianic process is all about, letting go of fear and learning to trust Hashem and to trust the fact that we're in a transformative time. So let's go back to Shabbat and look at the context in which Shabbat even came to be. So we know that Shabbat came to be in the beginning when Hashem is talking to, I'm just going to try to find the place, but basically it starts off when the Yidden are in Egypt and Moshe petitions Paro to let them go out of Egypt so that they can serve God. So when the Jewish people were slaves in Egypt, they were very, very busy. They worked every day. They were so lost in their hard work that for a long time they didn't even stop to take a deep breath. Now, I'm a yoga teacher and I know how many people don't breathe. And I know that people who are stressed or anxious or many people who are not in the best mental or emotional health are not breathing properly. Actually, it's a phenomenon. We don't take enough vitamin D as a general populace. It's just a fact. We don't rest enough. We don't drink enough water, and we don't breathe deeply. It's just a fact. One day something changed within them and they sighed. Hashem heard their sighs and he took them out of slavery and gave them Shabbat, the great gift of rest. Hashem commanded them to remember and observe Shabbat to ensure that they would never again become slaves to their work. So the idea that Moshe asks Paro to let them out, to go out and to kind of get a break from everything that is Mitzrayim. And I know that one of the definitions is that they worked in Egypt with avoda b'perach, back-breaking labor, and I believe Rashi says that they had shortness of breath in their work. So Mitzrayim is always going to be that symbol of going, and not taking time to stop, rest, surrender. Remember who you are, remember your core, remember your essence, remember who you are. It's very interesting that Paro had a vendetta against the boy children. And the boy children, the way we say male child in Hebrew is zachor. So he threw the zachorim, the male children, into the Nile. But the word zachor also means remember. Remember who you are. Remember what you're really doing. Remember your identity. Remember your purpose. When you're working so hard and you don't take a breath, you don't remember really what life's about. So the whole point really that Moshe and Hashem telling Moshe, get them out of there so that they can remember me, so that they can serve me, so that they can get into a different headspace. And instead of serving Paro, they can serve Hashem. So that is a quintessential part of our relationship with Hashem, is that we stop doing in the physical world and we get more able to be in a being space, which is what we do on Shabbat, which is a practice round for what we'll do later when the world transforms. when the world transforms, and we will be in a messianic era, we won't be working so hard. We will be more in a being mode. And this time is a little bit of a practice run. We're getting a little training of how to do that. You can't go so many places. You can't shop so many places. You can't go to all your do. So we're getting a training. So I want to read from you. So I do, a lot of times I read from books, and afterwards everybody is like, what book were you quoting from? So this is a beautiful book. It's called Torah Yoga. It's written by one of my teachers. Her name is Diane Bloomfield, and she happens to be a really good Torah teacher and a really good yoga teacher. So I'm just going to read from her book, and it's really very beautiful. So it says, the following Torah verse illuminates for us the inseparable connection between Shabbat, resting, and the soul. In 6 days, Hashem made heaven and earth, and on the 7th day, he stops working and yinafash. The reflexive Hebrew word yinafash comes from the same root as nefesh. The word nefesh is one of the 5 Hebrew words meaning soul. So right there's a beautiful play, right? Hashem rested, yinafash. In the resting, you connect to the nefesh, to one of the aspects of soul. It also means yinafash, it also means rest and recuperate. So another interpretation of yinafash, take a breath, refresh yourself. And she says here, 19th century Torah commentary, I'm not sure which commentary it is, teaches that yinafash refers to the rest and relaxation that restores the soul. So we have yinafash connecting to nefesh. And then I always teach in my yoga classes the connection between nashima, which is breath, with neshama. So as you breathe, so you connect to your soul. But if you're not resting, you can't really get into a deep breath, a deep pattern of breath. I think going from, I always mix up my Greek letters, but going from beta breath to alpha breath, I think. That as you relax your breath, you go into deeper states of relaxation, deeper, and the deeper states of relaxation you go, the slower and deeper your breath goes, and the more you access your soul, your neshama.
Bracha.
Yeah.
I need to go.
Oh. Okay.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I hope to join more often. If you do the Zoom, it's so much more convenient for me. So.
Yes, I do it every Wednesday night, so it was wonderful to have you.
Yeah, thank you. It was great. Okay. Very inspiring.
Good. Okay.
Wow.
Bye. So because the word yinafash is layered with meaning, there are many ways to understand it. On the 7th day, he ceased and paused for breath. Oh, I think I read this. On the 7th day, he stopped working and rests and restores his soul. So, and then, so that's a very a beautiful aspect about Shabbat. And let me just see if I want to read you anything else. I'll read you this other thing from the Sfas Emes, which is very beautiful, which Diane also quotes. And this is really deep, because all of time, really all of time, we've been waiting for this shift, for Moshiach to come, for us to be in, you know, and I actually get a little angry when people say, I don't really get angry, but I get a little frustrated when people say, you know, Moshiach is going to come, you know, by Pesach or by Purim, or Moshiach is, you know, for sure he's going to come by Shavuos, or Moshiach is going to come. And I feel like it doesn't really matter, because we're living in transformative times. These times are really life-altering times. Everything is shut down on Shabbos. The sports stadiums are shut down. The cinemas are shut down. The buses in Israel are barely running on Shabbat. Everything is shut down. People are home. People are thinking. People are not running around. This is the process. We don't have to wonder, when is Moshiach going to come? It's now. And now the training is happening to us being able to function on a different level, and we're being trained to move away from physicality and be more connected to spirituality, to the power of spirituality. But hang on, I've just said something that I don't really mean. Because at the same time that we need to get disconnected from materiality, as in shopping, spending money, working, going and getting more, we have to get more connected to, my mouth is eating and digesting this food. I'm tasting this meal. I'm saying a blessing on it. I'm breathing. I'm moving my body. My feet are standing on the earth. I'm altering my posture so my spine allows my breath to move more freely. I'm noticing the flowers. I'm smelling the roses. We get less material, less consumer, less run, rush, but we need to get more embodied in feeling our connection to the earth, to our beings, to our physicality, to saying a blessing, to smelling, to eating, to touching, to feeling, to being present in the world. That's about embodied Torah, being present in the world and appreciating God in every little detail. So don't be less gashmias and think you've got to be in your head, oh, I'm supposed to be all spiritual now. No, you've got to actually be more integrated. Your spirituality is not in your head, it's in your body. It's embodied in a simple thing of sitting on the porch and sipping a cup of tea and saying a blessing and being sensitive to the fact that you're drinking chamomile tea, which is calming your nervous system, as opposed to, caffeinated tea, which is, revving you up. And then you can say, wow, Hashem, thank you that you created chamomile, and, you created white tea or black tea, or you gave me basil, or you gave me a radish, or you gave me all these incredible foods to heal myself. And I'm more connected, but I'm not distracted, and I'm not buying and running. So I want to read you another thing about Shabbat. According to the Sfas Emes, rest is found at your root. This is a beautiful idea. There's no exertion when a person cleaves to his root, which is the place where there is rest. What and where is your root? This is kind of also it reminds me of Rabbi Nachman teaching that a person should look for their good point. Look for your good point, look for the good point in another person. Now the Sfas Emes is talking about your root. What is your essence, your core? Where do you find your flow? If you find your flow, there's no exertion. Consider for a moment the roots of a tree. Through its roots, a tree draws the vitality it needs from deep in the earth into the very edges of its highest leaves. The Sfas Emes teaches that people have a root as well. Like the root of a tree that is connected to the vitality of the earth, the root of a person is connected to the sustaining vitality of Hashem. We draw our vital energy through our roots. The more one cleaves to one's root, the more vitality one can draw from Hashem. Now the Sfas Emes teaches that the root is within you. He often calls it the inner point. Cleaving to your inner point is an essential mystical idea and practice. Jewish mysticism calls it devekut. Now, how do you get there? Just as the soul and resting are inseparable, so are resting and Hashem. In other words, to connect to that root within yourself, you kind of got to get quiet a little bit to kind of root down. So Your children will recognize and know in the most intimate way that their rest comes from you. The complete rest of love, generosity, truth, faith, peace, serenity, quiet, and security is at your root and comes from Hashem. So when you get resting, when you rest, then you can find your connection. So it's interesting because it connects to another idea from Rabbi Nachman, that Rabbi Nachman says if you have real faith, you don't have to go anywhere. Because everything, you'll find everything you need right where you are. So that's interesting. Because we live in a world of such abundance and we feel like we need to keep our shelves very full and we need to buy a lot of things. But if you have real trust, and you know, it's levels, I guess there are levels of this, we can work on it, there are levels of it, but if you have real trust and faith, you don't need to run around. You can be where you are and trust Hashem will kind of, you know, send you. So obviously I understand that there are ways to relate to that, and the people who study Torah and they, you know, have tremendous trust, but then other people are paying their bills or they're being supported by their parents-in-law, or they need to collect money. So I don't want to take it too literally. Certainly in my path, you know, my family members work, but there's a beautiful idea about that. If you really have trust, you don't have to, at least you don't have to work with so much anxiety. You can do everything in a way of this flow and ease. Where you connected to your root, there can be a lot more ease in your working. And of course, to relate this to the manna that they received in the Midbar, they received the man, so the root, the word man is inside the word imuna. Man, the manna, is part of the word for faith, that you would have faith that the next day there would be nourishment for you. You don't have to worry, you just have to trust that in the morning it'll be there. And that's how it was all the time that they were in the desert, and the point of that was to train them into faith, So I just want to read out this pasuk. I was looking for it and I didn't find it, but I found it now. I just want to read to you the way Hashem commands us about Shabbat and when he commands us about Shabbat. So, because it's very beautiful how it comes that the way I want you to look at it inside. It's right after they've come out of Egypt, right after they've crossed the Red Sea, right after that, and so it says they cross the Red Sea, and then they don't have water for a while, and they get very nervous and they get very upset. They don't have water. So it says, and he cried out to Hashem, and Hashem instructed him concerning a piece of wood which he cast into the water, and the water became sweet. And then there Hashem gave them a statute and an ordinance, and there he tested them. So even before, and then Rashi says, what does it mean? He gave them a statute and an ordinance, and there he tested them. Well, the statute and the ordinance was the laws of Shabbat. He gave right after they came, they crossed the Red Sea. There was a few little things that happened. They didn't have water. They cried to Hashem. Hashem gave Moshe a way to sweeten the bitter waters. And right away, even before they get to Har Sinai, this commandment to keep Shabbat is given. The laws of Shabbat and the red heifer and different laws of jurisprudence were given. That's interesting that it's one of the first laws that Hashem gives us when we come out of Egypt, is this law of Shabbat, because this idea of resting is so important. So I'm going to end, I didn't speak about the Sfirot. I'm just going to end with wrapping up, which is really elaboration and being more specific, because I said we finish in the week of Hod and we're moving into the week of Malchus. So today being Wednesday, the day was Yesod of Hod. Question from Sharon. Let me just unmute you. Yes. Unmuted you. Why are you?
You're saying we're going into Malchut. That's tomorrow. That's tomorrow, Malchut, right?
Well, tomorrow is going to be Malchus of Hod, and then after tomorrow, it's going to be a whole week of Malchus.
Of Yesod, no?
Today was, yeah. You know what? You're right.
Next week.
Yes, it's going to be a whole week of Yesod. That's right. Thank you for that.
But it's Malchut tomorrow.
Tomorrow is going to be Malchus of Hod. Yes.
Hod. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So really, thank you for some reason I forgot about the week of Yesod for a minute. I don't know why. So thank you for correcting me. So today was Yesod of Hod, but tomorrow is going to be Malchus of Hod. Now, Malchus of Hod is a great day to follow on from the Shir, because Hod is all about surrender, and Malchus is really the year. It has many aspects. Each of these Sfirot have many aspects, but Malchus is mastery, like we've managed all these 7 different aspects of a particular quality, and now we've really worked it from all sides. You can say we kind of have it, we've mastered it in some way. That's one aspect of Malchus. And another aspect of Malchus is Malchus receives from everything. I remember speaking about this last week. It receives from everything that came before. And just to stress that the idea of Malchus is the idea of Moshiach. The idea of Malchus is the idea of a kind of leadership that we're looking to find in a person out there who's going to embody these qualities. But at the same time, we've got to enliven and activate the Malchus aspect of ourselves. The Malchus persona that needs to be strengthened and activated within ourselves. So what does that Malchus persona look like? And how would you recognize it if somebody out there would be the candidate to become the leader of the Jewish people? Because we do believe that we're going to enter into an epoch, and the epoch is going to have a certain quality, and the epoch is going to have a certain nature. But somebody is going to be a leader who's going to define that quality, and that's going to be the mentor, the teacher, the Rebbe, the scholar, the leader, scholar, the leader, scholar, teacher, king. That's Moshiach. He's a leader, he's an inspirer, he's a teacher, and he's a king. But here's the interesting thing about him. He's utterly humble and selfless. So it's a tremendously interesting quality. It's an utterly selfless leader who doesn't only lead the Jewish people, but will lead the entire world to places of clarity and understanding of what is truth, what is right, what is wrong, what are the boundaries of Israel, who's on the right side of all the moral issues. He's going to be able to teach it and explain it in such a way that everybody's going to say, yeah, now I get it. Now, it's an interesting quality. A couple of weeks ago on my newsletter that I sent out, I put a video up of this rabbi who is an acupuncturist and a healer and a Kabbalist, which is a very nice combination because I like integrated, holistic, mind, body, Torah, Kabbalah, healing, health. So a lot of people said to me about that rabbi, which I felt myself, that he had a tremendously humble way of being, that he spoke and he said a lot of things, but not one, but maybe 3 people, and a couple of them were not observant at all, loved him. In fact, he had 3 people who are not observant at all, and find a lot of rabbis very difficult to listen to because they feel that they're very, they speak in a certain way that for them, they're not open to. They felt that the way that this rabbi spoke, he was incredibly humble, which is what I felt as well, that he had a lot of information, but he spoke in a way where there was real humility. So Malchus is this quality where you know what you need to do, you know what you need to say, you know who you are, you know how to be assertive in a certain way, you've got a mastery and a clarity about what you're doing, but you're completely subservient to Hashem, to his will and to his agenda. And when you're representing that agenda, there's no ego and there's no sense of self. So we're coming into, tomorrow will be Malchus of Hod. So Hod is about surrendering, Hod is about acknowledging, and Malchus is about really being that with a kind of confidence and an assertiveness that you can take yourself back, you can rest, you can be surrendered, you can be at ease, and you can do it in a way of unapologeticness, but in a very humble way. And that's pretty much what I wanted to share. And I think that we're in exciting times. I think that we have an opportunity to really pay attention and really listen and really grow and learn. And Hashem has made it easy because he's put everybody on vacation from a lot of the things that they usually need to do. So I just bless us that we can use the time well, and we should be healthy, and those who are not yet healthy should have immediate Yeshuas and Refuas and should be 100% better. And I'm going to unmute everybody so we can end, and I'm interested to hear any comments from anyone. I'm unmuting everyone. And if anyone has...
So, Bracha, I have to leave, but I want to ask you what epoch means.
What means?
Epoch?
Shefa?
I heard you say epoch, no? With E-P-O-K?
An epic.
Epoch.
Like an epoch, an epic moment. Epic.
Epoch?
Defining moment.
Oh, so it's just the way you pronounced it. Got it.
Yes,
I
the way
gotta
she
go, but it
pronounces
was a deep, deep, deep Torah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I don't even remember saying that word.
I wrote it down because the way you said it, I didn't recognize it. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right.
Take care.
That was great.
I'm so happy that Shoshana was on the line and you stayed the whole time, Shoshana. That's amazing.
The whole time.
Very happy.
Baruch Hashem.
Any comments that you'd like to share?
Well, yeah, I do think it matters when Moshiach comes. I know we're in process, but when that defining moment happens, I mean, it's going to be irresistible joy. So I understand we're in process, but I think it's, we sort of can't wait anymore. We need to see that moment, and we'll know. And I do think it's been a very long, very hard process. It's not just these weeks. It's been, many, many thousands of years. And when we look back in history, we don't have a simple history. And I think, what's the word? Yiddish chalishing.
Yes.
That's really what it's about. I think it's coming from a very good place, not, within the neshamas of people who need that. And we want to see that defining moment. That's the only thing I was thinking.
Well, the only reason
we know the world is overturning. The world is overturning. We know this. And we want to see it turned.
I want to see it too, but I don't like it when people put their hopes on it happening at a certain time and then there's disappointment. You know?
I understand, and we have to keep hoping.
It's going to happen by
continuous.
Shavuos, so it's going to happen, you know, and then it's difficult because then if it doesn't happen, people
right.
get disappointed.
But it's I mean, we're all, whether or not we know it, our neshamas are attuned to all of that. Some more clearly than others, and I think in our hearts we're all going to know that, and we're waiting. We're waiting. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I think it's coming from a deeply felt need and emotion that people are trying to define it. I think people have always tried to define it, and truly no one knows. But the signs are there. We're hoping. We've been given many opportunities, so we also hope that this time we succeed.
Amen.
Amen. Yeah.
That's
what I mean.
Please God, we should succeed. And then, Irina, we didn't. I'm going to make sure that there's no